and there's this one guy there, and he always asks me, he's like, "Hey, Steve, like, why do you don't have to go so hard, man? Like, you don't have to go hard like that. Like,
Yeah.
I go." And I was thinking about that, and I kept thinking to myself, like, and I just looked at him, I go, "Why not?" And he was like shocked as hell, like, "Why?" And he goes, "Well,
he didn't have a good answer?
You didn't have a good answer."
Welcome to the Opposites Unite podcast,
where we discuss real estate and lifestyle topics,
break barriers,
build connections,
and find common ground.
Let's unite.
So tell me a little bit about what Steve Tampus' morning looks like, because you have an early bird morning, dude.
I'm a super early bird morning. So, as we were just talking about this, so, I mean, what is it like to, like, I people ask me, what is it like to always wake up early? Like, aren't you tired? And one of the biggest things I'll say is that I'm not sure about you, but whether you wake up at 4 o'clock, or you wake up at 5 o'clock or 7 o'clock or even 9 o'clock, you're still tired. Like, it doesn't, that first 10, 15 minutes, you're always tired. Like, so to me, it was always a thing of, first off, I hate if I wake up, and this isn't, I could be anywhere. Like, I can be in Vegas, and some of the groups been with me. Like, I can be in Vegas, and I'll still be up before the sun comes out. I'll still be up even if we go to bed at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, like super early. Like, they got annoyed because I was like texting them so early. But my morning starts on a typical day, like even today. Today's Saturday. We're in Labor Day weekend. My morning started this morning at 3:15. I was getting myself all prepped, ready to go for not just the gym, but my day. By about 4:15, I think 4:30 I left. I got to the gym about 4:45. And then I just go through a full routine.
So Saturday morning, you're 4:45 at the gym.
No one's there.
Yeah, because everybody's like trying to recover from Friday night, right?
I have no idea. But I left.
Well, so what time did you go to bed, though?
I went to bed like probably 11.
So, dude, you
10,
got
11.
about 4.5 hours of sleep.
Mm-hmm.
See, that, for me, I need 6. Or at least I think I need 6. I know. But I feel like
had to.
I hear you say that, and I'm like thinking, what if I only did 4 hours of sleep? Am I going to be like tired throughout the day, or how's that going to work? But I guess I've never really tried to do 4 hours more than once. But I used to do 8 consistently, and now I can't do more than 6.
Well,
like 6 is my wake up and mind starts rolling.
I'll tell you, even as a young kid, like I can remember as a young kid, my parents would get pissed at me because I'd be up. I'd be the first one up. I remember, like, my neighbor, when I grew up in my neighborhood up in Saugus, I used to race bikes. So
Okay.
I would wake up super early on a Saturday morning.
Like BMX stuff?
BMX bikes, yeah.
Okay.
And I would wake up super early. I'd clean my bike. So my dad had all this chrome cleaner, and I would clean my bike. And then, as the sun, and I'm talking probably like 6:15 in the morning, I'd clean my bike. It's all nice and sparkly. I had a really nice race bike. And I'd go down, and I'd just cruise around. I remember I would knock on people's door at like 6:45. And I just remember the one time I knocked on, I kept just knocking. It was my buddy PJ. He lived around the corner from me. I kept knocking. And all of a sudden the mom comes out, and she's in a robe, and she's like, "Good morning, Steve. PJ's still sleeping." And in my head, I'm like, sleeping? I'm like, really? He's still sleep? Okay, can you tell him I came by? Like, I didn't know he's still asleep. Like, who still sleeps when it's light out? I had no idea. And I was always like that. Like,
So you've always been an early
I've
bird.
always been. I mean, now obviously, like, it's always changed. Like, I would go through times where I'm like up at 5 and then up at 4. Then I'd start getting up at 4. Then I don't know, man. It just, like, I'm up super and no alarm clock. Like, it annoys a lot of people. Like, I'm no alarm clock, no nothing. Like, when people stay at my house, like my family, like, my wife is like annoyed. She's like, "Can you not be so loud?" I'm like, I'm not trying to be loud. But I mean, it's 3:30 in the morning. It's really quiet in the house.
Dude, so if you go to bed at 11, right, and then now you're doing 4 hours of sleep, and most in my experience, most people take about 4 hours of sleep, right, and they're still tired, or they're not gonna wake up, right?
Yeah.
So so by the time 6 hours comes around, that's my brain wakes me up without alarm, right? So I'm just like thinking 4, because I went to bed like at midnight last night. Went to a party, and then like got home at midnight, and then got up at like 6, a little bit after 6, right? That's the way
Was the sun out?
and no alarm, huh?
Was sun out?
What was what?
Was the sun out?
Was the sun out? Yeah, the sun was out.
Yeah. See, that just doesn't happen with me.
So you're always up before the sun.
It doesn't.
So
happen
you beat the sun
every morning.
Is that the goal?
My goal, yeah.
I mean, in your mind, you consciously say, what if, have you ever woken up and the sun's out and you're like, damn, I messed up?
Pissed. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
See,
because don't get me wrong, like I'm tired.
Yeah.
I mean, you're tired, but
yeah, but are you just groggy from
No.
sleeping, having to wake up?
I think too, I get super excited. Like I get excited, like especially on a weekend. And it's only even like as like if you were to think about going to go play a sport, like there's nothing better than walking into a place and it not being it being empty. You know what I mean? Like, so imagine, and I think about this still a lot. There's not as we've gotten older, right? There's not a lot of times that we can act like that young kid that dreams. So like me going to the gym early in the morning, even if it's just that 1 mile, 2 mile drive, and I'm driving down the canyon and it's dark, there's nothing like it. To me, I love that. It is so peaceful. The you can hear so much. It's so dark. It's like the air is a little different. So I love that. And then when I get to the gym and there's no one there like that, I just love the idea of you can kind of, you can go into character. Like you could be anything you want to be right there at that time.
Well, you know what comes to mind is like Kobe Bryant, right? Mm-hmm. People always say Kobe Bryant used to show up at the gym. And mm-hmm. mind you, like in the height of his career, is probably mm-hmm. taking a helicopter to the gym, right? Mm-hmm. But he would get there at 4 a.m, like
mm-hmm. workout,
mm-hmm. practice, and then like people would show up, and he's like, they're barely getting started, and he's already done.
So if you watch some of his stuff, or even you read some of his old books, Kobe's thought process was, if I'm gonna be a pro, I'm gonna outwork you, and that meant if I started my workouts at 4 a.m. So by the time I did my hour and a half workout, 4 to 5:30, I go back, I have breakfast, I rest, I come back in at 8 o'clock. He can get 4 workouts in a 9 to 5 day, where guys were only taking 1 or 2. So he's on now compile that over the course of, his first like 10 years especially. He's like, I'm just going to be so far ahead of you. Because at the NBA level, and I think if you look at, and I have this thing in my head, I always think about, like, if you're a pro at something you do, how do you practice? Like even when we go play on Sundays, as goofy as it is, and some of the guys know me because they know we meet there early. I do a full workout. Like
before
I'm at the gym
there.
At 4:30.
Yeah.
I do my warm up. I do all kinds of dynamic stretching. It's like I take my whole Monday through Saturday to get ready for just that 2-hour Sunday. But it's it's like the way that it allows me to keep that momentum going. You know what I mean? Like, and that's why even when a friend, or just even like one of our friends just got injured, it like I just like last weekend I got hurt. I hurt my ankle.
Yeah.
But I knew by Wednesday I'll be fine. So by Wednesday I'm like,
yeah, I saw you.
I'm
You were
like
walking
Wolverine,
around. You rolled your ankle, right?
Yeah. Oh, bad. Man, it's been swollen.
But
It's still swollen.
You were walking around that.
Well, I kept thinking
walking back and forth.
Oh yeah.
Trying to loosen it up.
Well, I played and I thought, hey, it's not that bad. I can break up the tissue so it would reheal. But it's been pretty tough. But by Wednesday I knew. Yeah. I feel like unless it's a pretty bad injury, my body will recover by Wednesday. I don't. That's just
I remember listening to I think it's Ed Milet or something. Mm-hmm. He was talking about, like, if you get up and you work like 2 shifts a day, mm-hmm. because everything's like, mastery's 10,000 hours, right? That's the kind of the common knowledge thing now. Mm-hmm. So like if you're cutting, instead of 8 hours a day, you're chopping 2 shifts and doing that. I mean, that's the ultimate focus, right? And I think that's kind of what you're doing, because you're getting up early. You're focusing on your workouts. You're focusing that's your body, your health, and then you go to work. It leaves you enough time to go to work and get a good day of work done, and then you go home. Family time leaves time for family time, right?
Yeah.
Because you have a big beautiful family, man. Yeah. Beautiful big family, yeah.
Well, I that's the other thing I joke about. Like my real work starts at like 5:30 when I get home, because the 2 little ones they don't know anything.
Oh, yeah,
I always think about what Kobe says. I really do, because he says, like I might be a professional athlete and I might, be Kobe Bryant to all these different people. But when I get home, they just know me as dad. They want to go in the pool. They want to run to the park. They want me to go chase them. And so like, I literally, like I'll leave. I know sometimes I'll leave the office. Like it's funny because my my kids know how to call me now. Like they'll call me on FaceTime. They'll get my wife's phone. They know her code to get in, and they'll call me, and they'll be like, well, you know, what time are you coming? What time are you coming? Because I take them out. Like as soon as, I mentally have to say, okay, man, this is now the real work starts in.
If you don't get started at 4:30 in the morning, you can't get your workouts in.
No.
And then because I mean, as soon as 9 o'clock runs around, your phone's going crazy.
Yeah.
Emails, all that work, you know, and then maybe if you can start shutting down at 5:30, like 5, you know, because
I
people
usually
actually
leave
start.
the office by 6 o'clock.
You're pretty good about still answering the phone even after hours, right?
Yeah.
So, and you sneak those in, but then you have to leave enough time for your family, and that's what you do, and that's awesome.
The sacrifice is, you know, my kids do go to bed a little bit late. You know, they'll go to bed, and depending on how late I get home, you know, and we will play like the other night. I texted one of our good friends. They have little ones too, and I'm like, "Hey man, meet me at the park. I'm gonna run to the park." He's like, "Dude, you're crazy. It's already almost 8 o'clock." I'm like, "That's okay. There's lights there." So he's like, "My kids are already in bed." I'm like, "Oh, not mine. They're ready to go." And we were at the park till 9:15. You know, so but they love it. You know, they love. You know, they for some reason they love those little moments. It's funny because some of the neighborhood kids are all homeschooled, so they'll go with us, and they're a little older. They're 10, 11, and they'll just ride with us, and we'll go down.
But summer nights, I remember being a kid, man. Those summer nights when it's warm, and it's dark, right? But you're still out because I remember we used to play football till like 10 at night. Yeah. Mom would come out like. Mm-hmm. Then when Dad would come out, that was the trouble when we got in trouble.
Or we got the whistle. Like when,
you had a whistle.
If you hear my dad whistle, it was like that's.
Oh
time.
yeah.
But it was usually this. We had to be in by the street light when the street lights came on. That was.
Okay.
You know,
that was the cutoff time.
That was the cutoff time.
I think they let us go a little longer.
Yeah, but it's a busy day. It can be taxing, you know. But I really try not to think of it that way. I try to think, kind of like my days in stages. I have my early morning stage, then I got like the stuff I have to do for work, you know, and then I exit into like my real job, and that's being a husband, dad, all that stuff. Yeah.
So it's like you're able to take care of yourself, right?
Yeah.
Which is the one that takes care of everything else.
Yeah.
So you got to do that first,
Yeah.
and then you take care of your work, which in turn takes care of your family also.
Yeah.
And then you take care of your family at the end. That's a full day, man.
Full day, bro. You know, and one of the big things too, Eb, you know, because obviously I like to enjoy myself. Food's always been like a big thing I just like to enjoy. Like that's, you know, it's fun for me. That was always a great, like I love bar food. I love all those happy. I love that stuff, man. So, you know, with the little ones, you know, because, you know, I have a big family and my kids are spaced out. You know, I have my older ones that have been around me a long time, and now I have these little ones. The biggest thing about all of it is you know, my wife and I, we want to be around. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you know, my folks both passed, you know, when I was relatively young, and I'm so sad that my parents didn't really get it to meet, you know, my little daughter Brooklyn and little Grayson. You know, so I really want to be able to see, you know, them get older and reach an age. Hopefully we have grandkids one day, and so the whole trying to stay active and fit. I notice when guys slow down, they slow down.
Like it all
slows down.
Yeah.
And I notice that, you know, and again, we're getting older now, right? Like I've had four friends pass this year, you know, so
damn.
You know, you really start to reflect back and just think like, man, you know,
I've lost like 3 over the last probably 3 years.
And it's weird because it's this little window of time now.
Yeah, it's
right?
it was my poker crew. My poker crew used to be about 12 guys, and it's down to like maybe 7 or 8, right? And honestly, since the last one passed, like last year, we haven't done it again. But it's been a little bit of a you know, but we got to get it back going and maybe recruit some new people, you know, and just always remember the boys from the past, but you know. But yeah, and that's true. But it's just part of life, I guess, right? I mean, it's.
Look at our basketball crew. You know how many crews? Like, I still remember when we would go play. Because I've done this for years. You know, that's been a big staple of just who I am for so many years in the Santa Cruz Valley. And I used to be the guy that was like the youngest guy. I was the Noah. Like, why is he even coming around? Like, Why is he playing with all of this old guys? And all the guys would tell me like, wait till you get older. And
dude, I just see Noah, and I tell him all I see is hair, man, and boom, and he's gone, man.
Oh, it's incredible, So now you go into where everyone's around the same age, and now, like, look, we're the oldest ones out there. You know what I mean? Like, it's wild. Like, my buddy sent me a message. He says, "Hey, Tampus, are you still really trying to go out and play?" And it's funny. I forgot who I was talking to. I was talking to one of the guys in the group, and I don't think they really knew me or know me. And they were saying how he was saying like, "Hey, man, the old guy Steve, he's actually not bad. Like, he can play." And those guys were all laughing like, "Dude, Steve used to play basketball when he was younger, but it's, he's." In his late 20s. Like,
yeah. Trust me, I get told that a lot too, man.
You know what I mean? Like, so it's funny when you hear that and you start thinking like, damn, it's been a long time, So some of my friends now, like guys that I looked up to, that I would be like, oh, dude, that dude's come out there playing, And, I mean, they're pushing 60 now, And,
yeah. And they're
you
still out there?
No, they're not out there no more. That's why they'll send me messages like, hey, Tampus, you're still out there. I'm like, I'm trying, man. I'm, It's not like before, but
it's a freaky thing, man. You see people get hurt. Like a couple years ago, I went down and I popped the knee, and I thought I was done, man. I was like, but I got back in the gym, went to the doctor, got some like stuff done, and and then got out there and kept playing, man. But it's a game by game basis, man.
I will say like that's the big. Just like what I said happened to our friend the other day. It just scares to think about.
Yeah.
That. Because also I love the workouts. Like I love my morning workouts. You should come out. It's my morning workout is pretty fun.
I'm a little like, dude, I don't think I'm as strong as you, man.
No,
like,
not even strength, because I don't ever try to lift heavy no more. But one of the things is I remember there's guys in the gym, because when you go like Monday through Friday, there's the same people there. There's 4 or 5 people there, and there's this one guy there, and he always asks me, he's like, hey Steve, like, why do you don't have to go so hard, man. Like, you don't have to go hard like that. Like, I go. And I was thinking about that, and I kept thinking to myself, like, and I just looked at him, I go, why not? And he was like shocked as hell, like, why? And he goes, well,
he didn't have a good answer?
You didn't have a good answer. I'm like, and he's like, oh, and I said, while I can,
that's what I was
wanna
thinking.
Push, man.
You push it while you can, because you probably won't always be able to push it.
And it's not like the heavy weight. I think it's the fact of, like, so what I do is I do these, like, let's just say I do a workout. I'm always doing like multiple exercises, and then in between each exercise, I'm like jump roping.
So you keep your heart rate going, like circuit training kind of in a way. Yeah. I do the same thing. I rotate between 2 exercises, and I look like the mad guy at the gym, just going from machine,
pouring sweat. Yeah.
And everybody else is like doing one rep, and then they wait 2 minutes.
Yeah,
I can't do that either. Yeah. I sneak in like an hour workout, and I can get maybe 8 different exercises and 3 sets with 12 to 15 reps each. That's the goal.
That's
right?
the goal. Yeah.
If I can do that,
as you get older, that's definitely the goal. Yeah.
You get in, you get out, sauna, maybe some. If I can get in the basketball court and shoot some practice shots, so that I can try to make some balls in on Sunday.
On Sunday,
yeah, or Friday or Tuesday, whenever we play. Right, like that's
that I couldn't do. I couldn't play like every day like that. Like,
you know what I do? One is easy. 2 is hard. 3, I can't do it 2 weeks in a row. Like that starts. I need a day off somewhere in there, because I'm afraid I'm gonna get hurt too. Like,
does your knees still hurt? Like, especially when I play outdoor, it starts to
hurt. I told you I have a very like strict regimen with knees. Like a lot of that knees over toes guy from TikTok. Like, I follow a lot of his stuff. Always squat, always knee leg extensions, always another weird exercise that I got from that guy. Calves. Like I've always stayed consistent with that, and I won't go to the gym for everything else. Oh, and shoulders. I got to stay on shoulders. Yeah. Those are the two things that I freak out about: my knees and my shoulders. Just because I see that's probably the one thing that most people get hurt on.
Yeah.
Right. And the rest are like random, but it's getting hurt's tough, man, out there.
Definitely. All right, talk to me.
All right, so I want to ask you some questions about like work, or real estate, business. Right, or more like you're a mortgage professional, right? And that's your thing, and you're really, really good at that. So tell us a little bit more. Like, let's get into what you think the market's doing right now. Like, let's talk about interest rates, right? So that's a big hot topic right now. Interest rates are poised to go up in the next, or down, I'm sorry, in the next couple weeks, right?
Yeah.
So, like, what do you think? How do you think that's going to impact it? Like, I checked the numbers this morning. We had 538 active listings in Santa Clarita and surrounding areas, right? If you checked 6 months ago, it was 300. Maybe it started climbing, and then now we're at 5. So, serious inventory going up, right? And now the rates are going to drop. And more than likely that's why, right? So, how do you see it going?
Well, first off, what would you say a normal market is as far as how many homes are on the market?
Probably around 500.
About 500?
Yeah.
Is that normal? Or what's a normal market for a population of about 380,000 people out here? What would you say?
Well, okay, so I've heard it two ways, right? And I've seen it more around 500, but I've heard it said more around 1,000.
Yeah.
Like, and I would say that the top agents in this valley, and when I've heard them speak, they go more around 1,000, but being in the market, like, just local to Santa Clarita, because before, like, up to 10 years ago, I've been in the business about 18 years now.
Yeah.
And, but in the last 10, I would say I've seen it more consistently around 500.
About 500.
Yeah. And then for a while, we were like, during COVID, we were in the hundreds, right? 100 and something. It was like there was nothing out there.
Yeah.
So, but it was because the inventory was turning so fast, right? And the transaction count was higher. So people were just buying. Money was flowing, right, with all that COVID money and everything that
and rates were really good.
Rates were low. So it was like a perfect formula for a lot of transactions. But so now it's different, right?
Yeah.
So I would say 500 right now, because and you know what? Maybe what I'm seeing is a little bit of a delay. Like the days on market. So an average days on market is, I'd say 60, 90 days would be what would be normal, right? Like a normal days on market. But during COVID, we were 10, 20 days on market, which is insane, right?
Yeah, very fast.
Very fast. And then like a buyer's market, or what starts turning into a buyer's market, is like 6 months.
Yeah.
So kind of like I guess what I'm used to is being in the very low numbers. So when people say what's normal, 6 months, it seems so far out there that it seems like it doesn't feel like things aren't turning down.
Correct.
And
I think, and it's so funny because this business that we're in, and it's been so different, is like kind of what have you done lately, right? So like where rates are at, like I'm still having people call me because they have improved, and my thought on rates are they're going to continue to improve, but we are in a weird time. I think this is one of the most unpredictable times we've been in, and that's why you see so many different highs and lows in the stock market as well, because they just don't have any foundation of where it's really going to go. And it is so, right now they don't know. And, we're in a political year. There's a lot of agenda on both sides. And I just feel like that until some stability comes in, you're going to have these wild swings in the market. Interest rates were really good back in January of 2024. They started creeping in. I remember quoting out some deals in the mid fives. These are FHA. But if an FHA rate is around 5, let's just say 5.5%, that means your conventional rates, your conventional rates, your regular rates are going to be somewhere around 5.875 to maybe 6 1/8. So it's about 3/4 or 3/8 to about 0.5% higher. So we thought that was the window. We thought, okay, now we're going to have a little bit of a bullish run, but then the market snapped back. The Fed started saying we didn't like how quick the inflation rates were going down. So they paused everything. So when they started getting really, really dovish on that and just started saying, hey, you know what, we don't see it moving as fast as we want, rates shot back up. And we got all the way back up into the 8s.
Damn.
I mean, in 2024, rates were in the 8s. What's wild is if you even go back 6 weeks ago, when rates were higher, and I want to say 6 weeks ago, rates, like let's just say today's rate, and I quoted a rate, it's crazy, but I quoted a rate in a conventional rate in the high 5s this past week. But a normal rate, 20% down, you're probably looking in the very, very low 6s, like right above 6%. So when rates were probably about 6.75, 6.875, homes were selling over asking. I just think there's an exhaustion that the public has heard about rates coming down. So there's been a big pause. And I think with so much of the insecurity of what's going to happen as far as like some of the things that you hear on the news politically, it's caused a little bit of fear to people saying, I just don't know which direction to go into.
Well, I think, whenever I consider that, I look at, $4 trillion, gazillion dollars that were that were like injected into the
market,
the economy, right? So during COVID, because they were trying to balance out things and not letting things tank, right? Which was it was a good response, but the backlash of that is hyperinflation or inflation, right? So that was what we were trying to curtail down by raising rates and doing that. So there was money left in the market, right? And people were going to spend, and eventually that money starts to run out.
Correct.
So I think for me, that's kind of the underlying factor that has led us to where we're at now, where people are going, okay, they're running out of their savings or that money, and now they have to tap back into their real estate, because real estate's really where a lot of the wealth is maintained, right?
Correct.
Like people's equity is their backup source of capital whenever they either run into emergencies or want to buy a new car, whatever that is, right?
Right.
So like I'm looking at it now, I'm like thinking more like along the lines that we're running out of capital, and now people are going to want to start tapping into it. Oh, yeah. And then like everything that they look at, like inflation, right?
Yeah.
Because now people don't have the money to go overbid each other.
Correct.
So they're like, all of a sudden it's like I'm looking for a bargain. I don't have the extra $20,000, $100,000, $200,000, $300,000. We made an offer on a property once. It was It went for $300,000. It was at $1 million. It sold for $1.3 million.
Is that wild?
I don't think that would happen today.
Yeah. Well, I think,
or it could.
I think the homes that are done really well or remodeled or show really, really good will sell very well.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have the same, as much as there's, I think, a lot more buyers that are out there, there is a lot more inventory. But, one of the things that I always ask some of the agents that I work with is it good inventory or is it just inventory? Meaning, are they homes that we would really, really want to have, or are they homes that are just out there? And I think because in a lot of cases, with real estate, real estate's done incredibly well. And I don't know if you let's go back to 2021. Everyone thought market was going to crash.
Yeah.
I mean, I was someone that really went against that. I made a lot of bets to a lot of people in your office that I didn't think market would go down that way. Now, we did have a correction, but we've surpassed that correction of what we lost, and we're at all-time highs again. Now, we've had a little pause.
You mean right when COVID happened, like in March of that year?
Yeah, everyone was afraid. I don't know if you remember that.
No,
everyone was like,
you know what?
It's going. I had someone tell me that owns a big. They do a lot of different things, but he thought prices were going to go all the way back to 2012, and I was like, man, if it goes to 2012. Would you sell your real estate right now then?
Right.
And he said, no, I'm going to hang on to it. I said, but if it's going to go down 57%, then why would you risk losing 57% of your net worth? And,
right.
And he says,
so
because
I
believe in
money.
He left. He kept everything, and obviously it's done very well. We actually had $1,000 bet. So one of the things I was bullish on that just because I knew that there is very, very limited inventory. And with what interest rates were doing, and they were on the pose of going down, and this was kind of when rates started going back up, there's not a lot of people that would exit out of those payments because of what rent was doing. Look at rent, right? Back then. So I do see interest rates improving. Go back to that. I think the next Fed meeting, which is September 18th, you're almost guaranteed to get about a 25 basis point cut. That's actually like the Fed futures is gambling 100%, and now they're up 70% that they're betting that we're going to get a 50 basis point cut. So if we get a 50 basis point cut, that could be a big momentum swing for what interest rates do. Now, I don't think interest rates are going to swing like we saw in 2021, but I think we'll get back into the fives. There's a lot of other factors with what interest rates are doing, even on the backside of the servicing side, that I think is also being left out right now regarding where the Treasury is and where actual interest rates are and the spread between them. And one of the reasons the spread's so thick between them, and not to get too technical, but let's just say on Friday we closed the Treasury at 3.8. Interest rates were being quoted at 6, let's just say 6.25, 6.375 in a lot of cases. So that's about a 250 basis point swing. So on a 250 basis point swing, the typical margin between Treasury and what a 30-year interest rate would be is about 175 to 200 basis points. And that money right there, it goes to a few different places, right? So it goes to it goes to your servicers, it goes to your bankers, your brokers, it goes to a little bit of everywhere. It gets spread through. So when that margin was as high, so the Treasury hasn't moved so much, that margin was as high as 330 basis points. So it is slimming. The reason why that's also important is because smart money knows that if what happened in 2021 with all these servicing companies, that's why there's not that many servicing companies, is that money was getting sold off too quickly. They couldn't ever service to make the money back when they paid for the servicing rights. So imagine you having a home loan with Chase Bank. Mm-hmm. Chase sends it over to whoever to service it. Like let's say Mr. Cooper. Mr. Cooper needs to hang on to that loan for X amount of years for it to pay off for them carrying that acquisition. Does that make sense? So
I'm going to have to watch this video later on, dude, and probably slow it down because you dropped a lot of servicing things in there.
Yeah.
And it's like, because I think people always see the consumer side of what you're describing. Either I'm going to go get a loan and you're going to originate my loan, and what's my interest rate, what's my payment, what's my mortgage amount. What I think people don't ever consider is that what are you going to do with that mortgage? You just wrote a piece of paper says that. Yeah. Then you push it on to the other side because you got that money from somewhere.
Correct.
And depending on if you got that from an investor, right? Like just say you had one person in the back that that let you borrow $1 million, so you can let me borrow $1 million. Now that person has to get paid every month. Now you sold it. Now who's going to service that? When you say service, you mean who's going to collect the money from me every month?
Yeah.
Do all the paperwork, make sure I don't miss a payment, all that, and you're gone because you're the originator, right? So you're down the road, and then now they hold the paper.
Correct.
Right. So I think people don't understand that part, and whenever you start involving the Fed, right? When you start getting money from actual banks, and the banks get their money from the Fed, that's a different complexity to that.
Correct.
So that's what I understand you to say. But it's very complicated.
There's more layers than just seeing what happens with the temperature.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So there's more layers in it. And when you get technical, when you go to technical data, that's why there's been so much talk about improvement, because we do see the Treasury possibly going into the low threes, into the high twos. So if you take the spread, and you used to hear a lot that we could see rates in the high fours, low fives, is because if you take the spread between where the Treasury is at today and what the rates are quoting at, to if that Treasury bill gets all the way down to 2.8, and if we're still at a 230 to 250 basis point, then we'd be at that 5.3 mark that everyone talked about.
And that's the sweet spot, you think, for like seeing things change?
Obviously, if you went off only just technical data, then yes. But you have all these different reports that come out, just like that jobs report that came out.
Yeah.
That don't always come out the right way, and then they get re-audited 4 months down the road. So the initial caption, like even with like mortgage prices today are banking on a 25 basis point cut. So that's not going to be, it'll be good to hear because it's finally being heard, but pricing's already getting factored in with a 25 basis point cut. The real news is if there's a 50 basis point cut.
See, that's one thing that I think is a buffer that doesn't get well explained when people say it's baked in already, right? Like, because the market, ahead of seeing what the Fed's gonna do, will actually do it ahead of time, right?
Correct.
Because they kind of hedge their bets in that direction.
Hedged in, yeah.
So they will start giving out this rate early. So then when the rate drops, people are like, why didn't it drop? It did like a month ago,
Correct.
right?
Well,
like, and
they've corrected before.
Yeah. And because they're kind of
their adjustment.
they're looking at the indicators that are indicating.
Prior to.
That's a Chris Rock joke.
Yeah.
But like, what do you call it? So that's an interesting way of look. I mean, hopefully, like the idea, we always try to like educate people on how to kind of see things, and then, the idea being that if they have any other questions, they reach out to you, right? And they're like, hey,
and sometimes as real estate professionals, we can talk on a level to not just give you confidence, but to have confidence to understand what could be coming, but also the potholes that we could see, right? Like if we're going to, let's say we're going on a trip, the trip should take us an hour, but what could happen? Like you have a Tesla, so if you might need to get a charge, or if you get a flat tire, that can deter. So it's just like news in our business. If you were just to go off technical data and what we've been doing and how we've been tracking, our rates should be very good right now. But since we haven't gotten all the great news that we're seeing, and because of some of the data that's come out, it has slowed what we thought where we'd be at today. But we do think it's going to be a great end of 2024 and a really good 2025.
So for me, the numbers in the inventory going back up a little bit, and if we do see rates drop over the next couple months, or maybe one quarter, half, whatever, in the next month, I do see that inventory going away and it going back down a little bit, maybe dropping. And the main reason being we don't have enough inventory altogether, anyways, right? So I always look at the data, and I've chalked out a whole bunch of like charts of the builds, right? The new home builds, and how after the Great Recession of 2008,
the birth-death ratio,
right? Like the build, they just dropped off. So that we have like from 2009 to 2017, it was like it was so low that, and then all that inventory was not being built.
Correct.
And like the population growth. So those are the two tables, right? That I always look at. The population kept going up, builds kept going down. We don't have enough housing.
The slide on that though, Eb, is people are buying at a later time.
You mean older or
a little older than you go back to maybe when you're in your 20s. I know I was hyper eager to buy a home at 22, 23 years old. I don't see that same motivation sometimes from people that I speak to today, And if you even think of it like family starts, don't you notice like families are starting now a little later than what maybe we grew up seeing, like in the late 20s as opposed to
maybe even early 30s.
20s.
Yeah,
early 30s.
I think there was a lot of 20-something-year-old families. I love to see stats on that to see what the families. But yeah, I mean, I see a lot more people.
So if you don't have a family, the motivation isn't as as high.
Is it a nesting thing, you think? Like,
it's just, I think it's a different way. There's a lot of things. I think a different way of dating.
Yeah.
And maybe just coming and creating a family is different. We started very young. So I think that part of it is different. But, I'm still very bullish on housing, man. I really am. I think this is one of those really rare opportunities. I had a client conversation the other day. I don't think it's a great time for someone, and I might get a little heat for this. If you're not looking to stay there for just a little bit, it might not be a great time to buy. If you don't plan on staying in your home for 3, maybe 5 years, it might not be the best time to buy. But if you're looking to make a great investment on what can turn, I think it's an incredible time to buy. I just think for some of the guys that think, hey, I want to be an investor, I want to be a quick flipper, it's tough to find that right now.
That's I get that question a lot. I want to flip. I want to flip homes because they've watched a lot of DIY stuff and
I'm all about portfolio.
And you know what? We all love. I don't know about. I flipping homes and fixing homes for me is like a high, right? It's like fun. A rush, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot of excitement. It's like you got a lot of momentum. You got a lot of things going. It's an exciting thing to do. But what I've run into is that people, their margins, their expectations are very high.
Yeah.
They're expecting to make 100, 200 on each deal. And not that you can't, but finding the guy that's willing to take the hit and sell you the house that low when if you're smart enough to put it out on the market, open market, and get a lot of people to come in and look at it, those people, the guys that I work with, I have an investor that I call him. He goes out there. He's actually even sent me, okay, take pictures. I took about 80 pictures of the house. He bought the house sight unseen, picked it up, paid cash, closed in like 10 days because he's a professional flipper, right? So he got into a different industry for a little bit, so he slowed down, but he used to do about 60 a year, right? And then last time I talked to him, he was doing about 35, 40 a year. But his margins were like 30 to 50 grand. He was like, because he did 50, so if you do that many, and you do the margins, you're making $1.5 million a year in profit. That's enough for him, right? But if you're going to expect 100, 200, you're probably not going to do as many deals because you're going to lose out.
Correct.
Your margins aren't going to make sense.
Well, at his level, you have to have a really good crew.
That's what he has.
You got to know what your numbers are, right? You got to know per square foot what you're looking at. You got to be pretty dialed in. Like we work closely with a big institution. They're one of the biggest. They do 5,000 to 6,000 homes a year.
Nice.
And I've been constantly chatting with their buyers that buy. And so they're giving me a market pulse of what's happening on that wholesale side. like the auction side, because the reason why I think that's important is because now you can foresee what's happening in the market. So what would be the one thing that would just really hurt our values? What would you say?
Hurt our values from what perspective? I don't understand what you mean by value. Like
values would depreciate.
Oh, you mean
dramatically.
the value of homes?
Yeah.
Um,
Like what
That's
happened
like
in 2006.
the black swan of the whole, and if you're familiar with that, right? The black swan thing, you know what that is? Like
No.
The black swan. Okay, so black swan is something that is right in front of your face, but you don't think it exists.
Yeah.
And it's like if I have something like the planes that hit 9/11, they were there. This is there. Nobody expected that.
Yeah.
But it was right in front of us,
Correct.
right? And it comes together. 2008, how it crashed. We were giving loans to like anybody.
Yeah.
For like monster homes, and then like things came to a head.
It's funny. You can
Very obvious things.
Yeah. But now you look back and you can peel
Yeah,
back.
20. Hindsight is 20/20, right? But like, how do you pick today? And I think, is that your question? Like, what do I think?
Yeah.
That's a very. I'd have to think about that for a little bit to try to foresee what could be that. And I go into like a doomsday thing. I think that's the only real way I can justify thinking of something like that, and I probably don't want to go there.
Yeah.
To
be
honest with you.
I'll share.
Okay.
And good things and good indicators that you can kind of step to is you look at your NOD rates, and just this is what they were telling me. You look at your NOD rates, and then obviously you watch inventory.
Right.
Because if your NOD rates are high, and which is your notice default rates, which is pre-foreclosure. If that percentage is high, then something's going to happen, right? Foreclosures are going into market. In LA County, you know what our NOD rate is?
It's very low.
0.5%.
Yeah. Wow. That's even lower than I thought.
Incredibly low. But I want you to think, and let's just look at this. So if our NOD rates are really low, if interest rates should improve, when interest rates were higher, values were still high. And if you have a little bit more inventory, but we're still not at an average inventory, all the things that I've always watched and studied, average inventory for a population of our size is about 900. So if we're in the 500, we're still half of that. We're 2 months supply basically, right? Is that right? So if our inventory is still low, that's why I think there's a nice little window for opportunity. Now you got to look at where your NOD rates are, because it's different. Because I'm not sure if you saw what happened in Texas. Texas right now, values are going down, but Texas values are going down because they've overbuilt. There's so many homes out there that aren't selling. So you
like in Austin and in those areas,
all the areas in Texas. I have a client, good friend of mine, that's looking to buy in Texas right now, and he's getting pre-approved, makes pretty good money, and he says to me, I'm like, how much are you gonna buy? He's like, dude, I want to spend more than $220.
Wow.
And I'm like, $220?
You can't
buy. Where do you buy something for $220?
You can't buy a condo in California.
I'm like, how big is that? And he's like, almost 2,000 feet. And I'm like, where are you gonna buy? And he's like, so the agent calls me. I'm like, where is he gonna buy? Is this a good area? He's like, oh no, it's a beautiful area. Like, so what I'm saying is, obviously in California we move a little different. But I'll tell you another thing that I see. Now I see this too, is the incomes that, and I've said this before. The incomes that we work with, that we apply our loans for, are higher than we've ever seen. It's the highest incomes. I know our jobs are down, but I'm not talking about regular jobs. I'm talking about professionals. Their incomes, and the incomes I'm seeing is there's multiple incomes to families now. It's not just one income earner coming in, guy makes a couple.
So people like stack their incomes together, and then that way they qualify for more?
But that's why I'm also seeing, because of where price points are, I'm seeing a lot more different kinds of loans that are being offered, which now that could be a market shift, right? You're doing these different kind of loan, like profit and loss loans. Like, we have these loans that aren't stated, but you can state, bank statement loans, profit and loss loans. They're the kind of loans for your self-employed buyers. Because let's face it, it's more than likely going to be an entrepreneur or a business owner that are buying these $1.5 million homes.
Right.
These people that are buying these $1.5 million homes, to show an income to buy $1.5 million home as a sole proprietor or as a corporation, you're going to have to show $400,000 or $500,000 of income. Now, that $400,000 or $500,000 could cost you a lot of money. So what is an accountant's job is to minimize your tax obligation. As they minimize that tax obligation, let's just say that guy starts showing $150,000. that's still a big tax obligation. But $150,000 isn't going to buy you $1.5 million no more.
Right, right.
So now they say, you know what, man, you know what? I'll show less money in taxes, pay less money dollar in taxes, because there's a lot of different write-offs that they can write off through the corporation, and I'll just go with a bank statement loan. Okay, the bank statement loan's 0.75% higher. Hey,
it's a lot cheaper than
paying $140,000 for taxes.
So there's a workaround, right?
There's a workaround.
But you know what is good about those systems is that they still create stability in the market.
Sure.
Because in 2008 they did something similar, but they lied. I mean, it was just flat out lie,
well,
right?
They didn't have to document.
Right.
Really document.
Yeah,
like,
and that
now
was,
you have to document.
And that's the big difference. And thank God we have that difference, because that will create the stability in the market. Yeah. And it won't create the black swan coming from that side, right? Because you have solid people that are generating underwriting. They have the money. You're seeing it in bank statements. So yeah, I think it's a different way of underwriting it, right?
Yeah. Two, remember, back then, those kind of loans could be self-sourced anywhere. So like, let's just say you're looking to buy a home and you say, hey, Steve, I want to buy 2 houses. How do we buy 2 houses at one time? You can go to LA County and buy a house. Then you can go to San Bernardino County and buy a house at the same time.
Okay, they would record.
Well, no, the banks didn't talk to each other.
Oh,
because they could be, they weren't insured the same way. The money could be coming from different sources. So now all these loans, there's 2 ways it's going, man. It's either going to be insured by Fannie and Freddie. If you go FHA, it's all Govy. So you're going to see what's happening now. You can't do that no more.
Let me tell you a story, dude.
Yeah.
When in 2009, 8 or 9,
eight houses in one escrow at
15.
one time.
This girl had 15 houses under her name, dude.
Yeah.
15 houses under her name. She didn't have a great job, but her family member had figured out how to get her all these houses. And my job at that point, because I was, 2006 I started, so I was a newer realtor.
Yeah.
And mind you,
go find the houses.
Well, no, I didn't get her in the houses.
Oh, okay.
But I was tasked with, hey, here's 15 homes. We need to do something to sell these homes because we need to get them off her books, right?
Yeah.
Out of her name. But this is the beginning of what turned out to be short sales, right?
You.
So me having to write packages, offers to the banks, and tell them, like, look, the neighbor just sold for $450,000. I know she owes you $500, but what do you want to do? And we started so early that the banks didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
They were like, well, go find $50,000. And we're like, that's not going to happen. 15 times?
I will say.
That was brutal.
I think about that too. You know, some of the product back then, and I think that's why it's good they limit what they do for these new buyer like grants and everything, because the 100% financing and the 103% financing that we used to have, it's just so easy to walk away from.
Yeah.
And that's what happened.
No skin in the game, right?
So if you have a changing market and you have multiple investment properties, you're usually going to walk away from your investment properties because you didn't put nothing in to get them, right?
Yeah.
So on an appreciating market, obviously it's incredible. Now, go back a little bit too, and one of the things that I will say is what they did in 2021 with how they started doing that forbearance. Had they done forbearance in 08, we don't have 08.
You know what? I jumped in on a lot of that because we used to do loan mods.
Yeah.
And which was essentially a forbearance is like when you take the payments that are backed up, right? So you didn't make 3 payments and your payments are 3.
But a forbearance, what changed on forbearances, what we did when COVID hit, is the original rule that people didn't want to do forbearances is because if you did a forbearance, you lose your skin in the game to ever refinance for at least 12 months.
Right, because did you have to miss a payment?
No. But I'm saying if you asked to forbear,
that was when they just gave you a break.
They gave you a break.
So they give you 6 months off, like you didn't no payments for 6 months.
And then you say, I'm ready to jump back in.
Yeah.
You're back in day one. They smooth the 6 payments. Now you got 366 payments.
See, I didn't work in the mortgage industry at that time, but back in 09, 08 was before NMLS, and we did that kind of stuff.
But you did modifications.
Right, we did modifications. Yeah. So we dealt with people that would miss 6 months worth of payments.
Well, you made them miss 6 months of payments before you even let them modify. You had to be late.
Yes, the banks wouldn't do it.
So check this out. Now, so what could also hurt, obviously, prices is credit. So had in 08, I just want you to think about this. When everyone started becoming over encumbered because of value and started almost saying, hey, I can't make these payments. I think I'm going to be late. I can't make the payment. So they forbear. They say, okay, well, hold on a second. I'll allow you to catch up. Don't make any payments. I'm not going to affect your credit. Right?
Right. Those are
take 6 payments off. Whatever. Hang tight. So no negative credit history. Now people don't have to sell. Why did people have to sell? Because they're about to go to foreclosure. So what do? They fire sell. Bank can't sell. Buyer can't sell. They owe the bank too much. Bank understands that. What does bank do? Short sell. You do a short sell. What does it do to value? Devalue.
Yeah.
What's the next guy do? Oh, he sold down here. What do? Sell the same price. Value. So had they forbeared, that's why nothing changed.
You know what? I don't think
That's crazy.
Well, because we had a big flag that went up, COVID, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the government was able to acknowledge, hey, we got a problem, and they jumped in, which is part of the reason why we have the inflation. I would
Yes.
say, right? So
100.
there's a negative backlash to it too. But
there always is.
on the front side, they did pad the landing pretty up front.
So even let me go even a little further. So when rates went down, right? So if you owned an investment property and you had a renter that didn't make a payment, the counties came in and said, "Hey, your renter's not making a payment. Send me a copy of your lease agreement. We'll refund you the payment."
They even kicked in, yeah.
They kicked in. So now you're covered. Now, the fear of doing a forbearance was, crap, if rates get better, I can't jump back in the game. They changed it. They said, as soon as you make one payment, you go back on track, you say, I'm back in.
You can refi.
You can refi.
I do
Changed
remember
the
that.
whole game.
See,
So all I'm saying is that was beyond a soft landing. So obviously, it may not have corrected everything in '08 because there was so much other money that was, the money back then was going so many places and was being reinvested. It was way different. But I'm saying what a different kind of landing would have come out of there.
But what I mean is that in 21, the government jumped in.
Yeah.
All the alarms went off,
Mm-hmm.
and they stepped in and did all the work. In 2008, it was like everybody was surprised that everybody had gotten these crazy loans, didn't qualify for anything, and the picket pay loan, right?
Yeah.
That was the one where, just to be real quick about explaining,
Yeah.
you don't pay all the interest, you don't pay any of the principal every month, and then all that negative or the interest that you don't pay and the principal gets tacked onto the back of the loan, right?
Negam.
And then once you reach a certain amount on that loan amount, it
Calls due.
recasts.
Yeah.
And then it recalculates the whole thing, the full payment. You lose the ability to do that payment, and now you have to make that payment. So people, of course, couldn't afford it because it just went from $2,500 to $6,000.
Well, the reason why, and you know who were the biggest advocates and fans of those loans? I'm not even sure.
Investors, I think.
No, the millionaires. Because the millionaires, I just want you to think about this. You're deferring a certain amount of negative equity, right? The average appreciation, let's just say at that time, $1 million home is 5%. So every single year, you're making at least $50,000 on appreciation on a slow market, if your average is. So on that market, if you go back to that market in 01, 02, 03, we're like at 8%. I remember reading an article, and I remember I had it and I brought it into the office at the time when I was doing business. It was like 2004. And it said, LA County, the highest, your jumbo loan has moved up to 484,000 jumbos. Anything above a jumbo loan was 484.
What are we at now, jumbo loan?
1156.
Jesus, that's like almost 3 times the amount.
1.156.
Wow.
So when you think about that, that's when you say like, wow, so that's what did those loans. But you know who serviced those loans? The big bankers. So the big bankers were servicing it because of the insurance money. They were saying, hey, all these people are putting money into insurance. They're making hand over fist on this investment because they're getting a partial pay. They're getting a partial of the money and they're reinvesting it into the market. So they're taking the money that they're lending out to these people. These people are paying their loans. They're now it's securitized by real estate.
Right.
So they're like, real estate's going up, and again, deflation is the killer of all great things, right? So all of a sudden, these negam loans were incredible as long as appreciation kept going up. But once the market shifted and turned,
well, even the millionaire,
the people were sticky. So everything happens with obviously with greed. So they went from, okay, if you do a 1 year prepay, so what they say, 1 year prepay you get stuck, 3 year prepay, and then the killer was the 5 year prepay.
Oh yeah, that was because then you had to pay the prepay penalty, right?
6 months of payments, yeah.
Ouch. So all that is a bad set of circumstances.
Yeah.
It was like, but it
Can't even believe it happened.
But it's a black swan, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so obvious that it was there, and it was like written on the wall what was going to happen, but we still let it happen. And then they didn't. And the biggest thing that I think we're comparing with between that and the COVID one is that the government didn't react. Like they got the TARP
Fast enough.
the TARP program, but by then the signs were literally all over the streets, right? And like all the homes were up. The market was essentially crashing, and then they threw money at it.
Well, plus a lot of things happened then too. If you go back, so think about some of the biggest banks in the world, right? They all had liquidity issues. Why did they have liquidity issues? Because they are all heavily invested in these kind of loans. Whereas all the loans now, and I think back to, I got to recant my statement, because the reason they could do what they did now is because most of those loans are insured by the government, Fannie and Freddie.
Right.
Right. So that's why they can make a modification to the guideline and say day one you're back in. Back then, those money. So just imagine if a bank says we're insolvent, that means the ratio of what cash they have and what people needed out was less than. So you have all this money, because a bank only keeps 10% of whatever you invest in.
Right.
So put that by the millions, and all of a sudden all these people are getting freaked out. They're saying we want our money back, but these monies are tied into investments. And now you're in these neg-am loans. Everything's going the other way. Can't get the money back out.
It's over leveraged.
They're over leveraged, and so all these banks had. Dude, Washington Mutual was insolvent. They're gone.
Yeah.
Think about that. Washington Mutual.
Well,
that was the
now
biggest
Chase, right?
bank.
Because Chase took them over.
Well, Chase bought out the rest of WAMU, but WAMU was the big. I don't even. Everywhere I went, it was WAMU, and people look at me now like WAMU. It's just wild to think back to that, because I remember when people said Washington Mutual insolvent, banks closing. You're like, what do you mean it's closing? Like, how can a bank close?
So
it's crazy.
In 2010, right when that one crashed, 2009.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly but I had to go pull money out of WAMU.
WAMU.
And I stood in line and I wanted to pull it was $60,000 to cover payroll for my construction company, right? And I was like, but I didn't want to not pay the guys, so I was like, let me go get some money out. And then probably I wanted a couple weeks of payroll just in case. But they were like, nope, we can give you $5,000 and you can come back on Tuesday. We have to order the money. And I was like, it was like Thursday. I'm like, no, I want my money now. Like, I gave you the money. Why can't I have the money now? They're like, no, we can't give you the money. It's like, they don't have it.
No, because banks don't. They only keep a certain amount of their liquid deposit.
Right.
Yeah,
that's an
why they used to
interesting
always
thing,
say,
right?
like, if you had $1 million in the bank, go ask for $1 million back. It'll take you.
Yeah, because banks will take your money, lend it out, make more, like pay you 0.3%, whatever, and then lend it out at 8 and make the spread, right? That's something.
That's how banks make money. It was the funniest joke, because that ain't really free checking.
No, right.
It's you're giving them free money to invest.
Well, it's messed up when they even charge you $25 a month or $35 a month, and
depending on what kind of account you have. Yeah,
it's an interesting thing, man.
But but now that I think back to that, I forgot that all that money was being invested in so many different places, so it wouldn't have done the same things that did this last time.
So do you have any deals that you've ever done that were like, oh my God, like you were freaked out, or like crazy numbers like that you had to deal with?
I feel like all the time, and we're obviously so fortunate that business is still going okay. We obviously all wish it's busier, but even the deals today, they're harder than they've ever been before. And it's not even just expectation, but it's also, I don't even know if it's sometimes the bar is difficult. I'll share this deal that we just got referred over our way, and I'm just finishing kind of getting it all fixed. So buyer calls me up, was referred by a past employee. The past employee referred over a new buyer. Buyer gets referred over, and she says, hey, so-and-so referred me. I'm like, oh, okay, great. What's going on? She's like, I'm actually in escrow, but I have a bunch of concerns and questions. So I said, okay, what's going on? And she tells me that they just got into escrow in a condo up in Castaic. So I said, okay, cool. What do you plan on doing? She's like, FHA. I'm like, okay, cool. Do you know what complex it is? And she tells me the complex. It's I think it's a Cinnamon something. So I said, do me a favor, send me over the listing. So she sends me the listing. I said, do me a favor, send me the contract. So I review the contract with her, and she really did not know, like, what was going on. Like, she didn't know that there was only a 21-day escrow. Contingencies had to be removed in 7 days, and they had written up the deal on a 7-day. They had written up the deal as a FHA. So 10% down. So she thought she only had to put 2% deposit. She thought she was going 3.5% FHA. So she had no idea.
She didn't read her contract. And the agent didn't explain to her what was going on.
The agent didn't explain to her. So these are the situations that we get put in. And sometimes what's hard is sometimes you got to now be the bad guy that fixes it. But you're the good guy down the road.
Well, yeah, but you're the reality deliverer, which is not...
It's not always nice.
Yeah, but that's not... I mean, I can't imagine putting somebody into an escrow and them not knowing what the down payment amount is because it's on the paperwork.
Well, yeah. So the one thing I did is, because it was almost at the end of the day, and I had said, hey, do me a favor, just shoot your person that you're working with, shoot him a message and say, hey, I just, I'm looking over the contract. It says that we're putting 10% down and we're going FHA. Just wanted to confirm that because I thought we talked 3.5%. And so she did. And the guy said, don't worry about it. We can change it. We'll go 3.5% down FHA. So then I said, if he says that, which I thought he would, just say, hey, I just want to make sure you check to make sure that was FHA approved. 2 days. So that was, she contacted me on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
The complex was FHA approved?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's not.
Right.
I already knew.
Oh.
I pulled the address. I'm like, I told her.
No way. Yeah.
No way. So he sent her over numbers on Thursday and said, hey, we're still waiting. So they're pushing her to put her deposit. Anyhow, those are like sometimes the hard deals that we walk into. But you said, have I had a hard deal? We always get it. We always walk into hard deals.
Well, because I think you're the, I don't know, I refer deals to you too whenever I'm like, people come to me and I don't have the option of referring them. Yeah. But then they wind up like, okay, I have the confidence in another lender, and then they wind up putting me in a position because I have to come and make offers with that letter from their lender and the confidence that they've done the due diligence, because that's a different job than mine, right? So then I have to walk in and then I put my reputation on the line because I've worked hard to develop a good reputation with agents in the area, right? So they know you and you have accountability. Now, if you put yourself in that spot and then they all of a sudden either ghost you. I've had people ghost me like, oh my God, like, and I've had transactions where it's like one guy's selling a house to buy a house and then the other guy's moving to Florida to buy a house, right? So you got like a big daisy chain going, and the guy that's buying this house, it just, the lender goes like ghosts. Won't answer, won't do anything. But the reason I'm saying that is like, then I got to go to Steve and be like, Steve, bail me out. So I imagine that happens to you a lot.
Yeah, and we just another one we just did is very similar situation. It was on a non-warrantable. The lender was from the Valley, didn't understand that it was a non-warrantable. Had the guy running.
A non-warrantable means
the condo complex was underinsured. The master policy.
So you can't lend in it.
So you can't do traditional financing.
Okay.
So we are probably one of, if not the only one that will lend on these with decent rates. Like. So what I ended up getting this guy. So when I get the deal from the guy, they're in a 14-day escrow, and we're already 4 days in, and then we have a difficult buyer. So my situation gets pressured on is because the listing agent has an expectation, knows the buying agent, so that was the relationship that got the deal accepted, and then you have a buyer that still doesn't understand, and I think that's sometimes where agent and lender have to work together. So the story's the same, right?
Yeah.
And that's sometimes what becomes difficult and I say this, if they don't do their homework on the property that they're putting an offer in. Like, if you're going into another area that you're not super familiar, you better check the following. Like, if I were to say what's the hardest thing with when you work with a buyer in a different area is if they buy a condo. Because there's a lot of research you have to do in that condo to make sure that the condo is accepted, approved, like you don't have any issues. It's not a co-op. It's not a non-warrantable. Is the insurance right? And a lot of times we can't get that information. Unless you get a full HOA. right?
You get all the documents from the HOA
and that's
and let
and
you
that's
know.
sometimes what could take some time. And what used to happen is we could do what is called a HOA waiver. Like if you put down a certain amount and you have a really strong buyer, you could just get a waiver. But a lot of these places now are so, like, they're so red flag that even with the main investors, you can't even finance with them. Like they're tagged. It's called red tagged.
Is there anything else that we would that we didn't touch on that you think would be important to touch on?
I'm such a chatty bro. So let me think. I know that's the problem.
Thanks for tuning in to the Opposites Unite podcast. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to leave a comment for a chance to get a shout out in our next video. See you next time.